Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. And this is Tristan, who is a Corgi. He's very interested in the squirrels. And this is an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And today, many people have been asking for information about harnesses. This is something that will take 2 episodes, so we will revisit this on Tuesday. As tomorrow we have a special surprise, and Monday I'll be at my early in the morning educator job. So we will start with some harnesses and ways to hold your dog today and look at some of the options that we have. And then on Tuesday I'll follow up with some more information. So in general, we have a tick in our ear. We might have to get that right now. They're just coming out here and they're really in terrible. It's not attached yet. Tristan says it better not be. Right in your ear, poor guy. Tick pickup demonstration extra. I do have one of those tick removing cups that I almost always use, but that one wasn't attached, so it was okay to just grab it. Okay, so when you're walking your dog, let's look at our dogs. Our dogs are our friends, our companions, our significant other. In a lot of ways, dogs are closer to us than some people in our lives, and we want to be nice to our dogs. We don't want to treat them like servants or, lesser beings in any way, shape, or form. And so one of the things that, somebody that's just getting their first dog, like a friend of mine, she had no dog experience at all, and she got her first dog, and we'll have a whole episode about her at some point. But you don't know what to buy for your dog, so you end up going out and buying a collar because there's hundreds of them in the store, and you end up getting, just any old thing. This was Tristan's puppy collar. Well, it's after puppy. It has reflective tape on it, which is really important. Where I live, it's dark at 4:30 in the winter. If I didn't have reflective tape on his collar, I might not be able to find him, and it helps cars see him because he's short. They might think I'm just a person walking down the road if they didn't see the reflector tape on him when a car is going by. The other good thing about having reflector tape on your collar is that if your dog gets loose, as Tristan did a few times as a puppy, he was missing, and I finally found him with a flashlight because it was 3 in the morning. He jumped out of the car and ran when he was a puppy because he was afraid of the loud noise at my neighbors. And another neighbor and her dogs and I spent an hour and a half looking for him at least. And what helped us find him was the reflective tape on his collar as he was sitting up on another deck, high up, 2 stories up. And we could see the little reflective tape on the deck, and we didn't think a raccoon would be sitting at the door looking to come in, so we figured it was Tristan. So the reflector tape's important. But one thing about this collar, if you have a bigger sized dog, this one's almost folded in half, so it was meant for a slightly bigger dog than Tristan. You want your collar to be as wide as possible to be comfortable for your dog. Skinny little collars, even if they have rhinestones on them, are very uncomfortable for your dog, especially if you're pulling. And in fact, I can't recommend walking your dog, no matter how good they are, with just a collar on them. And in fact, I don't like putting collars on my dogs. And somebody even recently on one of my Corgi fan pages said that how many people walk or keep their dogs in a collar at all times, and nearly everyone said, oh my gosh, how could I do that? He's my best friend. The collar is not a necklace. It is not comfortable. I want my dogs to have the freedom of no collar, which is great if you have, as I do, a fenced-in backyard, albeit with some ticks apparently, and if you're walking your dog, a collar is not the best choice for a variety of reasons. Paired with something else, a collar can be good. So Tristan has another example collar here, which is his collar from Hawaii. This is just soft fabric sewn, and it actually, if you pull on it, it is a lot more comfortable than the other one because it's not that stiff. It's not very sturdy. It wouldn't hold up for continual wear, but it is a lot more comfortable for him to wear this if he has to have it on for a long time, like in the car, because I always travel with him in a collar, than this one, because this one's stiff, and just the weight of it, even without the tags, is hard for him. And to that end, I recommend that you use a chip in your dog so that you can find him no matter what. I have heard numerous stories of people that I know personally, and how many people do I really know? 5, 10,000? And for me to know 10 or 20 of them who have lost their dogs on a car trip, that's a pretty high percentage. So anyway, I think that it's really important to keep an identification on your dog when you are traveling in case something happens and he gets out of the car, as well as have him microchipped so that you can find him. So I prefer these wider collars because they are more comfortable, and this one's nice and light. And then Tristan has another special collar that was a gift from a friend of mine, and this is wider and it's much softer nylon. It's a great collar, and then it also has the added benefit of this reflecting light, which is actually not that easy to turn on. Let's get you on. There, it flashes. Can you see that? It flashes, which is actually sometimes when I have to ride my bike in the dark, I'll put one of these on my handlebars. But it definitely gives people an awareness that you have a dog with you, and if something happens and your dog gets loose, you can easily see him. It's also really cute around Christmas time to pretend he's Rudolph blinking with Santa's sleigh. So I like these collars a lot. They have a variety of new ones that are different from this, that have like reflective lights all the way around it. And the flashing on this can be really annoying for some dogs, especially if you have a dog with seizures. I don't recommend this particular one, but notice that it is much softer and it is flatter and wider, so it's more comfortable for your pet. To that end, as I said, I prefer not to keep my animals in collars even when I'm walking them. I want to have the security of knowing that if they get squirrely, I still have a hold of them. And I want to make sure that they are walking in balance. And you can do so much damage to the structures in your dog's neck walking them in a collar. And I have so many clients and friends who walk their dogs like just on the slip chain end of their leash. Like they just take the leash. This is a special leash, so this will be a little more difficult. They just stick the leash through the handle like that, throw it around the dog's neck. So it's a slip collar, trot him out in the yard for a pee-pee, bring him back in. Seems like no big deal, but one day one of my friends does that with a really heavy rope for a pretty small dog, and something happened. Her dog just turned the wrong way, a car ran by, maybe she pulled the leash, but it caused a herniated disc in the dog's neck, and she was down and screaming in seconds. So really, there's no safe way to do a slip knot on your dog's neck for even a minute. You're much better off to take the time to put his clothes on him, to take him out if you love him and you want to keep him safe and healthy. So we have a whole lot of things in T-Touch World that we can do with leashes to help walk our dogs, and we will go over that after I show you a lot of the equipment. I'll show you how to use some of it. So I always prefer a harness. Now, a friend of mine and I were at a big pet expo, and they were selling a particular kind of harness, which I have one. If it's not the same one, it's very similar. And many dogs were walking by wearing this harness, limping, and the person was pulling them really hard out of balance, and it was literally painful to watch this. And my friend's a trainer, and we eventually just had to stop people and explain to them how the harness was working and how it wasn't working, and apologizing to them because literally 2 rows over, people had been buying these at a booth. And their dogs were really suffering. I mean, I saw a lot of senior pets really just being pulled off balance by this harness. So Jack, our model, has one of these types of harness. Now there are tons of these out now that attach just in the front. And this one, you know, it adjusts up here. It does come across the dog's shoulder. When you're looking at harnesses, you want to see how they're affecting the shoulder, because if it gets tight on the shoulder, your dog will have a lack of mobility in their front legs and they won't be able to walk. And this will create a dog that's reactive and stressed. And even a nice dog like Tristan will start to struggle. So it's really important to look at how your harness is fitting your dog. So if I put my hand under here and pull this side to side, I can feel it squeezing his shoulders in an uncomfortable way. The other thing is, when it's adjusted, even if I put it as tight as it'll go, sorry, Jack, we're going to squeeze you up. And they're also really hard to adjust, I might add. It still has so much play in the front. If I'm walking, and let's say Jack is pulling because he sees something exciting, I am pulling him off balance this way. And I really encourage you to try this with either a stuffed dog or your real dog carefully in your house. and see how your harness works. And look at this one. If I adjust it so it fits him, it's going to put this alleged centerpiece off to this side. And that is not helpful to have your dog with a harness just on one side of his body. The other thing, as he's pulling, look what it's doing on this side. See how that's coming way forward there? And it's really cutting into his elbow and his shoulder. I can't stand these front attachment only harnesses because they just don't fit well. And your dog has a really hard time walking in these, and they're so popular now. There are many kinds of them. I don't like any of them, but a lot of people are using them, especially with bigger dogs. I haven't seen too many little scruffies in these. They tend to be in another kind that I don't even have a sample of. I might have to run and buy one for Tuesday. So anyway, these are really limited in their usefulness, and I don't prefer them. If you have one for your dog, you might want to try a different kind of harness and see about the changes you see in your dog. And thank God this one was a gift to me from someone who had bought a better harness, and they wanted me to be able to show people how this isn't good. I mean, it's just, see how it's pulling on this side of him? He's stuffed, but he still can't stand up in this harness. So that's one popular type of harness. For many, many, many years, I recommended this harness, which hardly fits British Corgi here. It is a Freedom harness full of Corgi hair because Tristan uses this a lot. And it's got a velvety part on the bottom here, which for a low rider like a Corgi or a Dachshund does get dirty. It washes beautifully in the washing machine. And the Freedom harness was made, and I might have to put this on Tristan to show you, so that it initially didn't interfere with the dog's shoulders. Bissy, can you sit up? I think we have to put this on you because they have to see how it fits. Can you stand up, hon? Come on. Come on, up. Can you stand up? He's like, aren't we walking? There you go, hon. He says, I have so many harnesses around me, I don't know when we're walking, but it better be fun. Okay, so initially, can you stand up all the way? Because they're going to have to look at your front end, honey. Initially, the Freedom harnesses fit shoulders like this. See, his shoulder blade is free. He can move his little arm. It's not pulling anywhere in there. And this piece here that comes around from the front was above the shoulder blade for him. It didn't do that on every dog, but it's really important that your dog have freedom of movement in the shoulder blade. And then over the years, recently, we've noticed that this part of the Freedom harness is starting to come down lower on your dog, like about here. So if you have a Freedom harness that fits your dog, you can only get them from the Freedom Harness Company, by the way, online. I really love them, and I still use them a lot. And I just find that they're well made. They come in great colors. And I have a story about the Freedom harness. My mom, who has a medium-sized Schnauzer, and my mom is now 80 and 4'10", and the Schnauzer is pretty big. She weighs about 60 pounds, 50 pounds, and being a Schnauzer, she's a terrier, and she likes to pull on the leash. And my mom was walking her in just a head collar, and the Schnauzer was pulling, and it was hurting her, and my mom even said that when she tries to take her for a walk, the dog hides, and she didn't like her harness, her head collar, which she had been wearing for most of her life, 10, 11 years. And my mom just didn't know to do anything different. And I said at Christmas when I was down there and we took the dogs for a walk, the Schnauzer was pulling so much. I said, Mom, you've got to get her a Freedom harness. So she went online. Within 3 days it arrived. It was a beautiful raspberry pink, and it comes with its own leash. Where is ours? Here it is. It has a handle that slides on the leash like this. And then you attach it, if you're my mom, to the top. Come here, stand up, honey. You're modeling. Oh, are you ready for your runway? It attaches to the front of your dog. Up this, up, come on, up. And the top of your dog. And then the interesting thing about the Freedom harness is that it does have a bit of a what they call a martingale. It's a little slippy on the top here. So what I like to do once I have my dog in a harness is put my hand like under his tummy and pull on it and see what that feels like. It's not squeezing him. It's actually giving him a bit of a hug, but it's not too tight. And then in the front, if I pull on the front, it's not, notice it's not, well, you can't really see this, but it's not sliding around him like that other one I showed you, and it's staying in place. Let me position him this way so you can see. Look up this. So if I pull this, you can see it's moving with him because he's falling off the table, but it's not pulling the harness out of place on him like that one on Jack was. It's rolling around him just because he's a loose dog, because he gets a lot of body work. But these two pieces allow you to have a lot more gentle say over where your dog is going, because you don't have to pull, because your dog is in balance now, and you just give a little signal and then he is able to return to, walking closely by your side. If you're my mother and you're not a person who's used to holding horse reins with 5 reins in each hand or something, you have this slidey handle, and you can just hold on to the slidey handle. And the only important thing is when your dog goes to the other side, you just have to plop it around the other way in front of him. And this is what we used for years and years and years as T-Touch practitioners with most dogs that we worked with. And it's really good. But since they started making them where they come lower on the shoulder, we started to look at some other harness options. And I'll tell you more about those on another day. But it's really important too, when you're walking your dog, T-Touch makes these great leashes. They're German dog leashes. We'll just talk a little bit about this type of equipment. It's got a bit of a heavier snap at one end, and then it's got a little clip place here, another one here, another one here where I have actually a hook attached because I often have 2 dogs and I attach them to each other there. My 2 Corgis have taught each other to walk on the leash. And then it has another lighter snap at the end. This is great because you can, just as this leash on the Freedom harness, you can attach it to the front of your dog and you can attach it to the top of your dog. And then you have, again, 2 handles. Now I'm used to riding horses. I can hold these reins a variety of ways and give him a different signal with just my fingers. And I use this more often than the slidey handle just because I'm so comfortable with this. But if I'm traveling or I have a lot of things in my hands, I often use the slidey handle. But the other amazing thing about this is that I can attach 2 Corgis to it, or it has a variety of lengths. When I take Tristan on a trip in the airport, I can snap this up close. So I have this much shorter if we're sitting somewhere, and if I'm taking him for a long walk with my friends and I happen to have this, I can make a little handle at one end and have all this leash for him. These come in 9 and 12-foot lengths. If you have a little dog like Tristan, you might want the 12-foot length. It's a lot of leash, but it means that you don't have to bend over. And we do a variety of things with the leashes with our dogs to help them. For instance, we might just throw the front of the leash in front of the dog like this, which acts like a harness in a way, because we can give them a signal to come back to us by just giving them a little pressure on their chest. Usually we'll put it between the front legs, but my dog isn't escaping and he's laying down. So that's one thing that we do. But I can't recommend enough these leashes. They are so useful, and people with senior dogs especially find this a helpful kind of leash to have, because there are many things you can do with your leash to help support your dog when he has balance issues, and having this kind of leash with the snaps and all these places to hook it can be really useful. So that is the T-Touch leash. And now, because the Freedom harness was not being made as beautifully as it initially had been, and because as T-Touch practitioners we are constantly looking for a better way to work with our animals that is gentler and more effective, so we now have a T-Touch harness that I really like, and I'll show you that on Tuesday, as well as a traditional step-in harness, which I use on Tristan when it's raining and awful outside because it's so easy to clean it, but it has pretty significant limitations. Oh, don't fall off the table, honey. Come back. So those are some of the harnesses that we use in T-Touch. And again, you don't leave a harness on your dog when he's running around the house all day. And I don't usually leave a harness on my dog when he's in the car, unless I'm going somewhere where he's going to be working and he needs to have his harness for that. It's better to put it on after you get there. And it's just not that comfortable. How would you feel wrapped up like this trying to sit in a car for 5 hours or an hour if you're going somewhere with your dog? And if I am taking them for a walk and they're going to be running free, I tend to put them in a collar so they have more freedom of movement. But again, I know so many people that have had incidences with other dogs coming up to their dog and perhaps being not very kind with other dogs, and having that harness has been really useful to scoop their dog up in a hurry. So if you're going to a place with a lot of loose dogs, you might want to have your dog off leash with a harness on, just so you can grab him if you need to. Where we walk, we might not see more than one other dog, and you can see them from a mile away. And so I have plenty of time to assess the situation and take care of Tristan so that he is not going to be in an emergency situation where I have to scoop him up in a hurry. So those are two of the harnesses. This one I don't recommend at all, the front attaching harness. The Freedom harness I recommend if it fits your dog. If he has full free movement in his shoulder with that harness, it's a good one. And also the Whole Dog Journal this month, this issue, had a review of harnesses, which is fairly useful. Part of what they assess, though, is how well it's made, and how hard it is for a person like my mom to figure out how to put it on and how well it stays untwisted, because as anyone with a horse can tell you, when you have equipment that's twisted up, it is a bit of a math puzzle to figure out how to untangle it and get it to lay smoothly on your dog. And if you're not very good with things like that and the harness does get tangled and you don't notice and you just throw it on your dog, you're diminishing some of the benefits of the harness. So the Whole Dog Journal probably reviewed 15, 20 harnesses, and I don't 100% agree with all of their choices, because they were including a lot of things like how it's manufactured, whether it's worth the price, and there were things that they didn't know, like we have on our T-Touch harness a lot of different loops on the top to attach the harness, and they didn't know what those were all for. And other harnesses, the same thing. They weren't really sure what all the attachment points were for. But it is a really good thing to review. I think you can get it online even. That's, again, the Whole Dog Journal and their review of harnesses in the current issue. So I prefer to walk my dog in a harness. I know some people use those mesh ones. My sister has some really cute harnesses that are made to look like little skirts for her dogs, or clothes. They have like a little skirt on them and a little flower on the top. And those harnesses actually fit fairly well. They don't pull on the dog in any uncomfortable way. They're cute if you have like a little Yorkie and your dog's not pulling on the leash, and they aren't throwing the dogs off balance. So even something like that seems sort of frou-frou can actually be a really good kind of harness. So don't say something to yourself like, oh, I bought the wrong harness, because really these poor people at that expo that were buying lots of these harnesses, and look, it does have reflector tape, which is nice, but it's just, even the way it's made, it's kind of, see how it's just kind of leaning to the right already, just because of the way the mesh and the, whatever you call this, and the nylon is put together. It just doesn't actually hang straight. They would have been smarter to make two loops on the sides so that this could hang straight, but it still slides too much on your dog's shoulders to be really effective. So as I said, in T-Touch, we look for a harness that fits the dog really well. We want it to stay in place when we're using it, and we want it to use as little pressure as possible to ask the dog to do what we need him to do. And of course, totally not a fan of any kind of prong collar or anything like that. And even just for fun, some people with like a bully breed will have a collar with little spikes on it. But even that is not what I consider to be totally humane, because if your dog turns his head, especially, for instance, a bulldog who's really chunky in the neck and has a lot of folds there, if he turns his head, those spikes are going into his skin. And bulldogs already struggle with enough issues with skin problems in between the rolls of skin on their neck when they turn, because they're chunky dogs. So, you know, it might be fun for a few minutes somewhere, you know, at a party to put the spike collar on your dog to make him look like a tough bulldog, but it really isn't a very kind thing to leave your dog in that for very long, because it does poke him when he turns his head, and you don't want to do that. So be really mindful about the kinds of collars and things you're putting on your dogs. Even a little collar with rhinestones, which a lot of people use on little dogs, Shih Tzus and Yorkies and things, even those rhinestones can be really sharp when the dog turns his head. So if he doesn't have a long neck and he's turning into those rhinestones, it can actually cut him and cause some problems. So think about how that's going to feel on your dog. Like put it against your hand and then squeeze it and see if it's poking you in any way. And as I said before, when I put my harness on my dog, up this, come on, come on. I always like to put my hand under the front and see how tight it gets when I pull it, excuse me, and underneath it and see how tight it gets when I pull it. And is that a tension that is even, and is it going to be uncomfortable? This one is a little tight on his tummy, but I think it's because I don't have it adjusted properly and it's sliding. But this harness, the attach in the front one, boy, I can't tell you how many poor little senior dogs were walking in their brand new harness and just so uncomfortable because it was pushing them out of balance so badly. So today we looked at these two harnesses, the Freedom harness, the traditional one, and this one I think, I don't know if I should tell you the name or not. It says walk your dog with love or not. And they are very available. And it's not just this one. All of the front attachment harnesses are not really great for your dog. If you're only going to have one point of attachment on your dog and it's the front, that's not a very good thing because it does throw your dog off balance. It's better to have a more traditional step-in harness like the one I'll show you on Tuesday, which has a place to attach in the front and the back because I bought a better one. But even that one, if it's only attached in the back, doesn't put that much pressure on your dog and it doesn't throw him off balance. So one of the things I like about using Jack here, my stuffed dog, is if I put different harnesses on him with the leash in different places, I can't show you this on film because or on Facebook Live because there's not enough room for me to do that unless I have someone holding the camera. But I can actually just pull the leash a little bit and he'll fall over if the harness is out of balance for him. So if you do have a little stuffed dog around the house, it's good to try a harness on him, even if your harness is way too big for your dog. For instance, he's worn a really big Freedom harness at times and it's kept him in balance. He has not fallen over, but that front attachment harness, and my mother has another one, I think hers is an Easy Walk. Both of them have knocked Jack right over, and I've seen my mom's pull my Schnauzer friend over to the side. And, you know, she's a senior dog now, and to be walking her in a way that's unbalanced is really unkind. And my mom loves her dog so much. She wants her to be a good dog and a fun dog to walk with. And in fact, after my mom got the Freedom harness in lovely Raspberry for her Schnauzer, I guess it's been 3 years ago now, she was walking a dog around the neighborhood and people did not recognize the dog because she wasn't pulling. And they came up and said, "What did you do? Did you get a new dog? What happened to your other one?" And she told many people about the new Freedom harness and leash, and a lot of people in the neighborhood, 3 or 4, went and got one for their dogs that pulled because it really does stop them from pulling. And I have to say, Tristan was a bit of a puller. He likes to be first, and when I used to walk him with Comet was lots bigger, and so instead of helping Tristan to walk on a leash, walking with Comet made Tristan a bit of a puller because he wanted to be first, and he had to scamper along to be faster than Big Comet. So he tended to be a puller, and the Freedom harness really nipped that right in the bud. He is hardly ever a puller now, except when he's really afraid. He's afraid of gunshots, and I have a lot of neighbors in the area that use gunshots. They're hunting in their yard and things. There's a big crow sitting on my deck. Oh no, it's a woodpecker. That's why I'm looking out the window. It's a big red-headed woodpecker. It's spring. Anyway, the gunshots really scare him, and he does tend to pull then, even in his Freedom harness, because he just wants to get home faster than I can keep up with him. Poor guy. So anyway, that's a look at a couple of the harnesses and some leashes and collars and some suggestions about how to find one that's right for your dog. The color is also important, and maybe we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. It has to be a color you like and one that your dog likes as well. So we'll talk about the color and 2 other types of harnesses on Tuesday. Tomorrow, we will see you at 9:25 for Conversations with a Corgi. We have a fun Easter surprise. Right, Tristan? He says, "It's not a surprise for me." And then, as I said, Monday and Wednesday next week are my days to do my other jobs. So we will see you on Tuesday to have some more discussion about harnesses. Thanks for joining us today. How can a dog choose a color? Well, we were going to do this on Tuesday, Sophia, but what I do is take a bunch of harnesses and put them in front of him. Where's that green one, Biss? We have a green one here somewhere. And I ask him what color he likes. Do you like that one? What about this one? Mild interest. Like that one? He's not a purple man. What about this one? This one is a little bit deeper blue. Nope, you like those better? He likes this one. This is the color I usually put him in. So that's how you do it. You just see which one your dog is most interested in. There are other ways you can do it with muscle testing, either on yourself or with your dog. You can also use a pendulum to ask your dog yes and no questions, and I can show you how to do that as well. And it seems kind of silly, but boy, I've been at so many T-Touch trainings with dogs and horses over the years, and when we change the color of something, it's amazing how much it changes the horse. Colors of wraps, colors of halters, lead ropes. It really, for instance, if we're working with a horse who's chestnut, which is a bright orange color like him, but more red, and we put red equipment on them, sometimes it really clashes and it almost hurts your eyes to look. And when you glance over, you know, you're just in a hurry to get something on that horse. And you see the horse, you can see his eyes bugging out because he's just not comfortable with that color. Colors matter a lot. So we will be talking a lot about colors over the weeks to come. But that's a couple of suggestions for your harnesses. Thanks for joining us today. I think I will run out to the pet store and buy one of these mesh harnesses that a lot of people have because I've got to be able to show you those. They are so popular and common now, and you need to know some of their benefits and drawbacks. All right, we will see you tomorrow at 9:25 for the Easter special. Have a great day. It's really beautiful out. The woodpecker's eating my tree happily out there, and I'm pretty exhausted from repairing the driveway and the front wall from the devastating effects of snowplow guy. So I am hoping to do a little light gardening today. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi for episode 38 of Conversations with a Corgi.